Ladies and gentlemen, Mohammad Gawdat.
Okay, all right. No clapping yet. No, clap at the end if it works. So, so I'll start by telling you what's on my mind, because I actually did not have that on my mind when I prepared for my speech. I was doing a speech in Slovenia 3 weeks ago. I was on a stage with a step exactly like this, and I fell from the stage. So at the end of the speech, please remind me to look at the step. Okay, I ask you guys to do that for me. All right, thanks very much. How many of you are below the age of 17? Show of hands, all ladies, please. Yeah, okay. Who else? Anybody else? I didn't think so. I was at Maastricht School of Management 17 years ago, which is amazing to think about it. It's so quick that life passes you by in a way. I should start by saying that you guys made something out of nothing. Right? So I have to say it completely changed my life, and I'm so grateful that you're doing this not only in the Netherlands, not only for the people of the Netherlands, but also for the world. And I think you are leaving a mark across the world, and I'm really grateful that I was one of those marks. 17 years ago as well, actually, one of the very interesting coincidences was in the RITI Institute, where I was the partner of MsM, was the very first time ever I logged onto the internet. I actually touched Mosaic for the first time. I don't know how many of you have ever used Mosaic. Okay, no? Okay, some early adapters. So Mosaic was actually the core engine that became Netscape afterwards and truly drove the internet forward. Understand at the time I was working at IBM, and at the time, a couple of years earlier actually, what happened was myself and a late friend of mine who was an absolute genius I was working on the AS400 machine, he was working on the RISC 6000, two different machines, two different Arabic code sets. And we managed, after I think a week and a half of work, to get the two machines to communicate. And Yasser, my friend, could actually manage to send me a ping, which was literally 4 letters saying ping in Arabic. Right? And the shaping was right, and everything was right, and it was a revolution for us. Imagine that only a few years later, I was at RITI, and I sit in front of Mosaic, and I have the entire world in front of me, everything talking to everything, right? Now, it might seem that 17 years is a long time. In reality, I think the world has changed in the last 17 years more than it has changed in the history of humanity until those 17 years happened. And I think if you really look deep, there has never been such a revolution in the history of mankind. What has been happening in our life is actually amazing in every way you can think of it. But the problem is, surprisingly, we don't notice that. I don't know how many of you actually notice, you know, every morning when you wake up that something has changed. I don't know how many of you, by the way, notice that every morning you use Google, it's different than the Google you used last night. We actually do more than 500 updates every year, right? We change the code every day, mostly twice daily, to give you a slightly better answer every day, right? And we've done that since 1998. So we are probably in version 4,925 or something like that, right? Now, the world is changing so rapidly, so drastically, but we don't notice it. And I kept thinking for quite a while, why are we not noticing? And I think the reality is that there are 2 types of technologies, some that are revolutionary, that completely change the model, and some that are progressive, evolutionary, that come on top of that. The first TV that is invented is so eye-opening. TV, at home, I get moving pictures, right? And you notice that. But then all the incremental enhancements on that TV don't really capture your attention, even though most of the progressive changes are the ones that really get the progress, right? I'll give you some very interesting examples. Just the year 2000, before the proliferation of digital cameras in mobile phones and digital cameras themselves, the entire world population generated 80 billion photos, a little more than 10 photos per person, right? 2011, the world generated 3.5 trillion photos. More than 80% of those are shareable, right? All of them are digital, they're clicked, they're snapped, nobody notices them, right? Nobody really sees the digital camera as the revolution, we see the camera as the revolution. I'll give you another example. The printing press, in my view, I think, is the absolute turning point of mankind, because it allowed us to share knowledge beyond novelty. right? But the printing press itself is noticed as the revolutionary technology. Kindle and e-books. Amazon announced in May 2011 that 50%, more than 50% of the books they sell are now in digital format, right? This is the largest bookseller in the world. But we don't notice Kindle. Kindle is constantly printing books for you every time you click on a page, and we don't notice that, right? Now, another issue with the technology that we're going through in this age is that it is a bunch of too many little things. There are too many little things. You don't notice the newer version of Android if it's a little different than the iPod and the iPad and the iPhone and so on and so forth. There are too many for anybody to capture the whole big picture, right? I will try actually to tell you the big trends, because really if you understand what's happening and how it is shaping our societies and life, you shouldn't look at one device, right? Even though some devices like the iPad actually do have a major change in our lives, right? But it's not one technology or one device, it's the major trends. And I'll try to highlight three major trends. One is what I call democracy of information. So when I went to school in Ain Shams University, even in my Maastricht years, I remember very well in Ain Shams University, I sucked at the theory of hydraulics. If any of you are civil engineers, theory of hydraulics is really not that difficult. The issue for me was that there was one book, and I had to book it 6 weeks in advance. And they'll say, come on Wednesday at 11 o'clock. And I would queue from 10 a.m. waiting, because I'll have half an hour with the love of my life. And that's it, right? And we couldn't afford to get the books. Nobody could get other books, and that was it. My son today has access to all the information that a Maastricht student has, to a Harvard student has, to a Yale student has. As a matter of fact, a lot of the courseware is out there. My son today, or any child in India or in Africa or in Russia, can learn anything they want. The only limit is if they want to learn it. Let me give you a few statistics. We get more than 2 billion people asking Google questions every day. More than 4.5 billion, maybe even more questions every day. 16% of those, by the way, is new. I don't know how humans keep manufacturing that. Every day, 16% of 4 billion queries are new. We've never heard of them before. We have to answer them back in a microsecond, right? Otherwise, you'll say, hey, Google is slow. And in that microsecond, we have to scan an index that is more than 100 million gigabytes, right? The internet is growing at a speed. We have to answer you back within no more than a delay of 3 seconds if a piece of breaking news breaks, right? We have to find it, put it on our index, and send it back to you. But the internet is growing at a rate of 1,800 exabytes a year. Exabytes is, just to put it simple, is 1 billion pickup trucks full of Shakespeare books, okay? The internet is growing at 1,800 of those every year. Now imagine the speed that this is happening at, and that all that information is not only out there, it's out there and being found. Anything that you're looking for. If you, I had a lovely gentleman yesterday, we were talking about if you wanted a book from a library, you had to go and say, okay, I'm looking for Islam, and you would take out one book and hope that you will find what you're looking for inside, if it was a physical library. Today, you will just type the words, right? That level of knowledge is being augmented by a technology that I don't know if many of you are noticing, something that we call machine translation. So one of the missions of Google since the day I came, Eric was telling us that we have are not even close to achieving the mission of organizing the world's information until we make an English speaker find what they want. If it's available in Russian, they should find it. Why shouldn't they find it if it's what they're looking for, right? And so for you to understand, we have more than 200 million people using Google Translate. Right? We translate more than 1 million books worth of documents every day to the world, right? Now that availability of knowledge removes the language barrier. It's not perfect yet, but it's getting there, right? And most of the Latin languages are close to perfect. Understand what that means to knowledge. It means that if you're in your business or in your school or in your life, anybody in India, in Pakistan, in Russia, in Africa, anywhere in the world who wants to know and can know more than you. Right? That democracy of information, in my view, is a major change to the way the societies work. And I know Petra is going to talk about that availability of information a little bit and what it means to the political landscape. Now, the barrier to that, though, is that not everybody has access to the internet. So you can say, okay, that's not really a major changing force yet. Understand that there are 2.4 billion people in the world today that enjoy what I call democracy of access, right? We believe that more than half of the Chinese in the world within 2 years will have access to the internet. We believe that at least 1.5 of every 2 people in the world within the next 5 years will have access to the internet. Larry Page, when he tries to get us back on focus, our CEO, will always tell us Google is only successful when our products have been used twice a day by every human on the face of the planet like a toothbrush, right? And part of the task is we want to make every human on the face of the planet have a way to access the internet. Not a very difficult task, by the way. I managed the African business for a while. It wasn't a business. The African operation was zero revenue. And we were shooting for a device that can sell in Africa at less than $50. A device that is as capable as this phone, right? Which by the way, is as capable as the personal computer my son bought 4 years ago. And we achieved $50. We're actually now shooting for 20. There will be a time where I can give you a smart device that can access the internet and give you access to all of that wealth of information at close to nothing, with the economies of scale. Now, the third mega trend, before I tell you what does that mean, is a trend that we call the democracy of production tools, right? And if you ask me what is really making the difference, it's the fact that every person on the face of the planet today does not need to be a professional to develop the next big thing. So I'll give you the most famous example is YouTube, right? On YouTube today, we get 60 hours of video every minute. That is more than a decade worth of video every month. That is more than a month worth of video. So that means that a month's worth of uploads to YouTube every month, we receive more videos than the total American broadcast corporations, the 3 top networks, have produced in the last 60 years. 60 years, right? Every month, the world is developing that content. And you might say, but it's not all good content. I apologize. It is all good content for somebody. Somebody likes that cat on a skateboard more than they like what CNN tells them, right? And the truth is, some of those videos, you'll be shocked. We have videos that go to 300, 400 million views, right? Completely done through a phone camera, right? Now, the other professional content, if you grew up in my time as a civil engineer, AutoCAD was impossible. It was multi-$1,000 tool, was very capable, but I couldn't use it. I couldn't afford to use it. SketchUp, which used to be a Google tool, is now for free, right? We sold it to another company. Even if you don't have the skill, you can go to elance.com, freelance.com, and so on, and basically get somebody to do it for you. Ask yourself, all of those apps that you have on the iPad, all of those apps that you have on the iPhones or on Android, where have they been developed, right? They haven't been developed in the Netherlands. They're not developed in the US. This whole revolution is developed in the living rooms or single room homes of people somewhere in the world, right? The largest of them, by the way, have not been developed by a developer. They have been developed by somebody sitting somewhere in the world saying, I have a good idea, and then going to Elance and saying, can you build it for me? And somebody builds it for him for $100, right? Imagine what that means to our world. So I actually think, if you remember one thing from what I'm trying to say today, it is as follows. The only monopoly going forward is going to be on knowledge, vision, and courage. Right? Sorry, not on knowledge, on vision and courage, because knowledge is not a monopoly. Everybody has it. Okay? Production capabilities is not a monopoly. Access to funding, to markets, to global markets is not a monopoly. The only monopoly is, can I be courageous enough to step out there and change the world? Right? And surprisingly, if you look back at the last 15 years, all of those that managed to change the world have actually been foolish enough to think that they can. Right? Somebody like Larry Page wakes up one morning, takes one PC in Stanford and says, I'm going to download the entire internet to that little personal computer. Which I have to say, Larry, that was absolutely mad. Right? Nobody thinks that way. But people who are changing the world are people that that think that they can change the world, right? And I think those are going to start coming to us from everywhere. You are not going to know who is going to start the next revolution. And we say that in Google. We know that one day somebody will make one of our technologies, or maybe even all of our technologies, obsolete. But we don't know who that person is. And hopefully that person at least will have been enabled by a Google technology, right? Now, this is something that really needs to be understood very well. There are two types of technologies. Once again, I need you to differentiate. There are technologies that build products. Like if you invent cement, you use that to build buildings. And there are technologies that build technologies, right? So when you know how to program, you can use computer code to allow you to do machine learning that allows you to program better, right? And that cycle, that spiral is so fast, you have no idea. I cannot tell you some of the science fiction we're working on, but it is beyond what you can. I cannot think of anything that I have ever seen in a science fiction movie that will not happen in the next 5 years. Let me put it this way. I'll give you two examples of courage and vision. Sergey Brin is one of our chief courage providing people, right? Sergey Brin goes out there and says, hey, the industry that made cars for the last 120 years is wrong. And we're like, yeah, Sergey, okay. No, seriously, they're wrong. Those cars are not good. Yeah, okay. No, I think cars should not have a driver. I don't know how many of you have heard of the driverless car project that we have. We now have cars that are approved in 2 states in the US that will take you from anywhere to anywhere without ever touching a steering wheel. Those cars have been operational for the last 1.5 years, not a single accident. They know where they are, they know where the routes are, they know the traffic they see around them, okay? And they will take you from A to B without a single accident. Okay? Now this is a practical example. A computer science example, for those who love computer science, one of my favorite things last year is we always, you know of artificial intelligence. We have something that is called prompted AI. Prompted AI is you give the computer a little bit of a pattern and say, go and detect that pattern anywhere, right? This year, we took 16,000 computers. We told them, hey, go watch YouTube and tell us what you find. Billions of videos, 16,000 computers. They went out there for a while and then one of them said, I found something, right? Totally unprompted. They found cats. They started to tell us, here is every cat on YouTube, right? Now this is absolute science fiction, totally unprompted, right? They found something, they shaped it, they looked at it from all angles, all jumps, all meows, all sounds, and said, I think this is a pattern, and I think I can detect it. What is it, by the way? We said, call it cats, right? And they started to find that out. Those types of things are completely revolutionary, completely changing the world. So I will stop by saying, what does that mean, right? So I told you all of this, what does it mean? It means to me that we started with a quote from Steve Jobs, and you guys have iPods on your tables. I wonder why are you doing that to me? I'm a Google guy, right? You should have a quote from Larry Page and Androids on your table. But Steve Jobs completely changed the world. He completely changed his company. You know, 3 revolutionary products that completely changed our life: the iPod, the iPhone, and the iPad, right? And nobody can take that away from Steve Jobs. What did Steve do when he went to Apple? The first thing he did is he created those ads, if you remember them, here is to the crazy ones. He said, stay foolish, be courageous, try to get out there and do something different, right? And I'm saying that in today's world, you have one of 2 choices. Either get a little silly, right? Like Petra's going to talk about, you know, what happened in some parts of the world that started to get really silly, right? And change the world because it's not that difficult anymore. Or expect some very unexpected changes. I will tell you, hands down, we have not even started yet. So prepare for some interesting rides in the next 5 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mohammad Gawdat. Now, ladies and gentlemen, vision, courage, and the trends have been underlined by Mohammad. I'll give you a couple of minutes just to interact a moment at your table. And yes, mind your step, you did, very good. And then you can send in your remarks, questions, comments, and then we will have a couple of minutes where we will talk about it. So take your time, a couple of minutes, and we will get back to you. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, there are some very interesting questions which came across. And the technique, it did work. So, Mohammed, one question asked by table number 6. Where's table number 6? I don't know. Oh, it's over here. The question is, how do we keep stimulating students' intrinsic creative thinking as they get everything out of Google? How do we keep stimulating students?
How do I answer this question politically correct?
That's not necessary.
Okay, I am in the middle of academia. You can't, honestly. I think you have to change. You have to really completely reinvent the way we do things. I think what's happening now is that you know, there was a time in my lifetime where I was, as an engineer, I was obliged to go into the exams without a calculator. In my first 2 years of engineering, they said, hey, the human mind should be capable of doing that stuff, walk in and do it, right? And I happen to be a reasonably capable mathematical person. I love math and I did that okay, but it took a lot of effort. And the exams were longer and they were more difficult, right? And I made a mistake every time. There was no way you could do the mathematical calculations and do it right every time. Now, my son goes to high school, or I used to go to high school, and it was okay to take a scientific calculator with him. And I think this is happening, right? I think the reality is that we are freeing our brains from a lot of things so that our brains do the stuff that is really what is in the question, the creative part that a computer cannot do. I think more and more our children, I mean my son, my daughter, I used to get a little you know, annoyed at the beginning, but this is their life. When we are speaking about anything, if I mention the word Maastricht, by default they will pick their phones and just type something in. They won't ask me back and say, what is Maastricht? They'll just ask Google. Right?
Yes.
And I think that's okay, because we were just talking about some of the extensions that can happen to technology with things like Project Glass, for example. I don't know how many of you have seen that. When you basically have a layer of technology in the background, all of that information becomes available to you intrinsically. You don't really have to look for it, you just have to use it. And I think education has to move along with that. I think the way we should teach people is how do you use the information when you find it, not how do you find the information. One, the information that you have learned 3 years ago will have changed today. And two, there is way too much information. Nobody can have 1,800 billion trucks of Shakespeare in their brain.
No.
Yeah.
Will, at the end, our human brain change because of all these developments?
It's changing in positive ways and negative ways. And there are scientific research actually about that. I think one noticeable difference is our capability of you know, keeping a larger set of knowledge is becoming much more apparent. So my kids for certain know a lot more about things than I did when I was their age, for certain. They know enough about it at the abstract level and are always able to dig deep. I think our social skills are completely collapsing. And it's actually also scientifically proven. What's happening now is that we are again going in breadth with social skills, so we're going to get to know so many more people, but really not at any quality of relationship. No. And that is something that is really noticeable. And hopefully one of the things we're trying to do with G+ is to change that a little bit, but it's very difficult when I mean, for example, I'll give you a statistic again. In China, there are more than 40 million users who have more than 500 friends that they have never met in their life and will never meet in their life.
Yeah. That might change as well one day, doesn't it?
I think social is changing. If you you know, I'm not trying to sell G+, but I think the design we made on G+ was trying to make social networking a lot more social. So things like Hangouts, where you actually chat with people face to face, is much better than than just leaving something on the wall and then hoping somebody will see it. Things like circles where you actually put people in the right context. I really don't want my mother to see what I post for my wife, right? Mm-hmm. I really don't want my friends to see what I say at work or vice versa.
But do you now state that Google finds it as a duty to make sure that there are more socialized systems?
Yeah, unfortunately, we find it as a duty to do a lot of things. It is true. We are, which is annoying sometimes, coming from other companies other than Google. It took me sometimes to grasp. Because sometimes I would say, why are we doing this? Seriously, why are we staring so much discomfort with Google? Sometimes we take some very, very strong stands, right? And we maybe, if it was a commercial enterprise, maybe we shouldn't take those stands. But in Google, sometimes we say it's not a business, it's a movement. So things like freedom of expression, again, I'm setting up for Petra here. Things like freedom of expression are important to us. Yeah. These are things we believe in.
Yeah. We take one other question because there are quite a number now, but you will answer them later on and we will be able to send it to our guests. This one, this is fun as well. How will archaeologists thank you, of the future be able to find our history? That's a nice one. Table number one.
That's my absolute favorite topic, actually, of the year. Thanks for the question. So we did we are information junkies. Everyone you will come across in Google just loves knowledge, right? We had a small group. Nobody knew they were doing this, but they decided to take the last 25 years of satellite imagery and put it all on Google Earth. Right? In a way that allows you to actually do things you could have never imagined, like chart things and how they moved, you know, how streets evolved, how the Amazon forest decayed, how, you know, the ice cap, okay? So more and more as we are able to get our hands on that knowledge, we put it out there publicly for people to use it and basically see that. But we will only go back as long as the information is available, which at best is, 100 years. Yeah. Going forward, however, I don't know how many of you have seen Panoramia, for example, on Google Earth. On Google Earth, we have a tool that allows people who have been in a certain location, who posted a picture on that location publicly, we actually take all of those pictures and stitch them.
Okay.
So
as in a time frame?
No, in a three-dimensional view. So as you look around, you can literally see the world as those people saw it from their camera eyes, but it overlaps the pictures to stitch them. So if this part of the computer was in picture 1 and that part in picture 2, we'll be able to stitch it and build that three-dimensional world.
Yeah.
Now, again, imagine, so one of the major trends that is happening is how computing becomes a utility, just like electricity became a utility. There will be a point in time where you will be wearing a glass or some sort of device where computing is just in the background, information, internet is just in the background, and only when you need it you can bring it to the foreground. Yeah. And part of that is pictures.
Yes.
So imagine with the evolution of the storage and how less costly storage is becoming. Today I could probably keep my entire lifetime of video on maybe $40,000 of disk. In 10 years' time, it will be on $4 of this.
Yes, but when we look to the question and see what will it be in 100 years from now or 1,000 years from now, how we will look back, it's uncertain.
If all of that is available and if all of that is posted and shared, okay, there should be a way where you could simply say, hey, I'm interested to see what happened in the Maastricht event in the year 2012, and there will be something that can replay this. And that would become a total history of mankind. It would be very interesting.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mohammad Gawdat. Thank you. We will continue